Hey, everybody. It's week 10. Yes, it is week 10, a bye week for me, but not for this pod. Hope you're doing well, and welcome to another edition of Thinking Out Loud. My name is Andrew Siciliano. Thank you for watching or listening, however it is you're taking in the show. If it's on YouTube, like, subscribe, all that fun stuff. Spotify, the same. Write a review, whatever the people tell you you're supposed to do. We appreciate you joining us as we get ready for week 10 and look back on a fantastic game that opened up week 10, in which the Ravens beat the Bengals, and they have, in essence, given us, those two teams, the best two games maybe of the year, an 80-point game and a 70-point game. Let me open up the show by telling you right now that if the playoffs were to start today, I know they do not. That would be bad for everybody involved. There would be 6 new teams in the postseason. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Let me also tell you right now that as we sit here to get into week 10, there are 9, count them, 1, 2, 9 teams that have only 2 wins. In essence, in conversation for the number 1 overall pick. Normally it's like 1 or 2. There's a couple of teams with 2 wins, 3 wins, or at this point 1 win, or maybe even no wins. There are 9 teams sitting here with 2 wins that could be legitimately considered contenders to be number 1 overall next year. And if the Carolina Panthers, who play in Germany, how about that export to the Germans, the Panthers and the Giants, if the Panthers get it, it means they will hold the number 1 pick at one point, because remember, they had the trade with the Bears. They will hold the number 1 pick for 3 consecutive years. Doesn't mean they will have it, but they will have it in their possession, at least temporarily, for 3 consecutive years, which is just bonkers. Along for this ride every week on our Thinking Out Loud. What's the name of the show, Andrew? Out Loud podcast. My good friend Sam Patesh. How are you, sir?
Wonderful. And I would just say, if we could see the Bengals and Ravens maybe 3 or 4 times a season, that would be, I would sign up for that
we
right
sometimes
now.
get them 3 times in the season.
We
when they
do,
meet
and
in the
that's
playoffs.
wonderful.
Yeah.
But to think what happened in the overtime game with the Bengals lining up for a game-winning field goal, and then to be at the 2-yard line with a chance to win again and not happening, and to be, instead of having potentially 2 wins against the Ravens, swept by the Ravens. That's the difference in their entire season. And just, wow, I love watching these two play, and I would just love it more often.
Yeah, I agree. And a couple of things on that game. Number one, you have the 2. Look, Joe Burrow is having the best season of a losing record quarterback ever, statistically. Lamar Jackson is the MVP, Sam, as you and I have discussed countless times. Derrick Henry also having a very good season. He's also in consideration, but Lamar Jackson, that play he made going backwards 20 yards and then tiptoeing down the sideline. Bengals defense tackling, seriously concerned, but he's in the MVP conversation. He is the MVP. Jamar Chase, what he did, 450 yards in 2 games against one team is just, it's not fair. And the move that he made, the speed that he hit, the gear that he found on that, well, the first of the 2 long touchdowns is unlike anything other than Tyreek Hill in the NFL. That game had so many amazing moments. And wow, did you just see that plays that you could make a movie. NFL Films could right now. Mount Laurel, I hope they're sitting down at NFL Films and taking those 2 games and putting them together in a movie. I don't think we're going to get a 3rd episode this year of those 2 teams for a number of reasons. Number one, I don't know that the Bengals are going to make the playoffs. I think they've dug themselves far too large of a hole. Number 2, Sam, if they were to get in, I just, look, it's going to be luck that they actually face each other. I am legitimately concerned, if I am a Ravens fan. Albert Breer reported during that game last night that they tried to get Marshawn Lattimore, offer the Saints a 3, didn't get the deal done. Instead, he's going down 95 to the Commanders. They gave up multiple picks, including a 3. I'd be concerned about the Ravens defense. I saw this defense in person a couple of weeks ago in Cleveland when the Browns beat them. This is not a Super Bowl defense. No other way to say it. And you knew there was something going on when they brought in Dean Pease. Zach Orr's team did enough to win that game last night. And on the final go for it on the 2-point try play, they did the job. They got off the field. They got away with 2 blatant penalties. That's another issue. But look, they made the stand. Good for them. But their secondary is a mess. Now, when the Browns beat them a couple of weeks ago, they had the worst pass defense in the NFL and didn't have Marlon Humphrey, TJ Tampa, Nate Wiggins, and Marcus Williams was benched. So they were not only the worst, but they were shorthanded. Last night, they got a bunch of those guys back, not TJ Tampa, but Marcus Williams and Wiggins and Humphrey, and they are still not good. This defense is not going to win a Super Bowl, in my humble estimation. Lamar, as Marlon Humphrey said after the game, is carrying this team. It is a fantastic watch. It is fun to see, okay? But the Ravens team I saw last night, edge of your seat fun, is not a team, in my eyes, that right now, and we're only at the midseason point, there's a lot of fixing they can do, but that team is not going to win a Super Bowl like they're currently constructed.
The good news is, as you said, they likely would not face Jamar Chase in the playoffs.
Right.
So that's nice. Now, of course, one of those losses being the Chiefs makes you wonder. We all talk about how great the Ravens are when we look at the AFC, and there's this interesting dynamic where most of us look not past the Chiefs, but there's just this sort of Chiefs will be there. We'll talk about it when we have to. And in the moment, we like to talk about the teams that are better. And of course, back to week one, likely's toe on the line. And that would have just tied the game. I believe that would have given them an opportunity to tie the game. They would have needed a 2 point to even tie it. The Chiefs won that game. My point is, people remember, as maybe likely, that would have won the game. No, that would have potentially tied that game. And we all know how overtime goes with the Chiefs. Just ask Tampa and Baker and all of that. But they won't have to play this type of team. The issue more even just specifically than saying defensively, it seems to me, it's just these fourth quarters, if you will, Andrew. It's the holding on to leads, right? And I understand that is defense overall, but there's something specific because you look at the Dallas game, up as large as they were on the Cowboys to allow the Cowboys to come back in that game, to the fact that the Cowboys had the ball with potentially we're going to get the ball back. Lamar ran it out.
Raiders game, and this was an issue last year.
Yes. This, and you had said it, it's actually going back to four. I had really remembered it as 2 seasons. It's really 4 seasons of the Ravens sort of having an issue holding on to leads. But what really sticks to me also is this debate about the 2-point conversion as well, about whether or not, and because this week brought us both sides of it. And you had even pointed it out on Twitter. Yeah, going for the 2 is nice, but getting the 2 is actually the most important there, right? I mean, it can be the right decision, but of course, when you then don't give yourself the opportunity to go to overtime, there's going to be a debate. How do you not in a game that's going back and forth like that, get it into overtime? The momentum seems to say it's obvious. Go for 2. Do you feel any differently based on seeing both of these scenarios in the span of 5 days, not even in the span of 3 days?
I don't feel differently when the other teams have Lamar Jackson and Patrick Mahomes. If the other team has Gardner Minshew, all due respect. Of course, that's the all due respect. I'm not giving you respect. It depends on who the other team has. It depends on if I've been able to stop the other team. It depends. And listen, I know the analytics people, and I don't mean that in a condescending manner, say that there is no such thing as momentum. Yes, there is. Okay. Stand on a sideline and tell me that momentum doesn't matter. The people that say momentum doesn't matter have never stood on a sideline. They just haven't. And when you stand on a sideline, you know that momentum matters. Now, is each individual play call a unique event? Yes. Can anything happen? And are your odds logically the same, right, for each individual event? Yeah, I get I'm probably butchering the logic here, okay? I don't speak analytics very well, and I understand how this sounds. I'm not some Neanderthal screaming with a beer in my hand here. Momentum does matter. I got what Zach Taylor did. He said on Friday morning that was going to be his plan the entire time. They were on the headset the entire drive saying they're going to go for 2. It wasn't a surprise to Burrow nor anybody on that offense. There were 2 flags that were not thrown on that drive. Now, the Mike Gesicki flag, Burrow says likely wasn't thrown because he was working to his right where the progression started. And if he had looked backside to Gesicki, who did, to his credit, a heck of a job of throwing his arms in the air and trying to sell it, then maybe they should have thrown the flag. That, to me, doesn't matter. It was a blatant hold off the line, and it should have been thrown. Period, full stop. The other one, you have to stop missing a hand to the face of the quarterback, especially when it happens twice on the same drive. For those who say, well, this should be like the NBA, you can't throw that flag. No, that's wrong. You can't hit the quarterback in the face. You can't do it. Now, Burrow said after the game, and I give him credit for this, Sam, he said, I'm not going to be the complainer. That's not me. I'm not going to be that guy. Zach Taylor said on Friday, Joe's not that guy. I need to complain more. Complaining after the fact, they're not going to throw the flag. They're not. It's consistent complaining during the game that makes you look like a crybaby on the sideline that gets the flag thrown. Where it really has to happen, though, and again, Sam Zach said this, it has to happen before the game. Coaches meet with the officiating crew before the game, and it serves a number of purposes. Number one, sometimes you pull them aside to say, hey, we've got a trick play planned. All right, circle of trust. Be on the lookout for this. It's not illegal. Like, we might shift our tackle eligible over here. Don't be caught by surprise. That's legal, okay? Here's what we plan to do. And they go, okay, cool, got that. Right? Things like that. Coaches also say, hey, can you keep an eye on 65, for example, on the other team? He always goes hands to the face. And sometimes, because he plays guard, I'm just making that number up, he gets away with it. Can you please keep an eye on that? Well, coaches also say, hey, my quarterback was hit in the face 4 times last week and none of it was called. Can I get one of those today? I know it's not your crew. No, it wasn't your crew. But can I get one of those today? And Zach Taylor says he has to be better. It shouldn't require that, but sometimes it does. And sometimes it has to happen every single week.
We're so used to it in baseball, right? We're so used to it in baseball because what happens is the manager storms out of the dugout and yells. Now,
you can't do that in football.
True, but in almost every single case, the storming and the screaming, etc., is not necessarily about changing it in the moment, but changing it for the next time, right? So perhaps what Zach is saying is on that drive, earlier in the drive where Joe is hit in the face, then if he's yelling up and down, screaming about that in that moment, when it happens on the 2-point try, maybe now it's top of mind, right? I mean,
at that point, you're also fighting, the urge for the officials to keep their flags in their pockets on the decisive play of the game.
Of course. And by the way, that's what Burrow said after the game.
Yeah.
You're not going to get a call. He says, you're not going to get a call in that situation. I'm okay with that.
I disagree. You should. No.
By the way, the rule is the rule, right? You're saying rule is the rule, period, and it should always be called. I mean, I go back to 2 years ago, again, the Super Bowl with the Eagles and the Chiefs, obviously holding in the end zone, which essentially let the Chiefs run out the clock and beat the Eagles with a field goal. But you know what? Letter of the law, what was it? Holding in the end zone.
It was holding in the end zone.
And that's going to happen. And of course, people say, let them play, but it goes both ways. And fans are going to be completely unruly with this. I have a bigger issue with what happened on the 2-point try, Andrew. I think the Bengals should have a better play. As far as if we know all week we're going for 2, shouldn't there be an exceptional play there? And that looked like,
what do you want, a Philly special?
No. By the way, wouldn't mind a trick. I mean, Philly special is a little intricate. Obviously, we saw Bo Nix and the Broncos run it last week, but would I like to see something that feels like a guarantee? And I guess what I'm saying there is, I mean, look, Philly special involved a number of players that wouldn't be Jamar Chase, as I'm alluding to here. I think a 2-point try, yes, should have something that's either guaranteed or in your absolute best player's hands. Hudson in that situation, is he your best player on the field? We know who the best players on the field were last night. Hudson's not one of them. And that is not an uncontested throw, right? He's got to make a play there going up for a ball.
Uncontested throw.
I'm suggesting
the other team gets paid too. Like you could run a pick, you could run a rub there, but I will say this: that's where an official is far more likely to throw an OPI flag in that situation.
It happens a lot. Happens a lot. So maybe you don't want to rub there, but something that opens it up in a better way, allowing someone to make a play, getting the ball in Jamar Chase's hands and allowing him to make a play feels like something a little better there. Chase is after the game. I'm open. I'm always open. That makes sense. I'm not suggesting that, but it felt like you'd want a better play right there. And it just didn't feel like that was the best play, even though going for 2 was right. I will say we learned one thing, and the Bengals taught the league this, and everyone should do this, Andrew. Getting the ball, going for 2, and faking the snap. and trying to get the team to jump. I mean, if you can gain a yard, I think everyone should try that. Now, it
Totally
helps that
gain
you
a
have the
yard.
timeout. It helps that you have the timeout, right? You need that. But
Right.
that was certainly something that the rest of the league can take. And I only want to say this much. The 2-point try and the debate over it, it ties into the overtime rules in my mind. I just wish that overtime didn't involve a coin flip at all. I'd love to get the coin flip. I wish there was a way to say either the home team always gets the ball first or the visiting team always gets the ball first. Or, okay, how about this? What about the coin flip at the beginning of the game?
Well, then it is tied to a coin flip.
But if it only one coin flip, but only one, and one where the entire game, you know, that you're either getting the ball first or not in overtime, because that would play into the decision at the end of whether you're going, because you know, if you have the ball there and you're not, you are not getting the ball first in overtime, feels like going for two is going to happen more often in that situation, right?
Just stop the other team. I
just hate the coin toss. I hate that coin toss.
If you hold them to a field goal, you get the ball back with a chance to tie or win.
I just hate the coin toss.
The other team has Lamar Jackson. The other team has Patrick Mahomes. So be it. I get, look, until you go back to both teams get the ball regardless, which is what it was before Josh Allen and Patrick Mahomes gave us that classic in the postseason.
Right.
Unless you go back to that, you're going to see this. And I'm okay with it. I'm totally okay with it.
No issue Monday night.
Mahomes is inevitable, right? Todd Bowles, in my mind, totally messed that up. Mahomes is inevitable. And if he didn't realize that, then he didn't watch the Super Bowl last year in Vegas. I assume he did.
Of course.
Lamar Jackson, slightly different, but they've been unable to stop him. So I get why Zach Taylor did that, and maybe he learned from Monday night, and it just didn't work.
And by the way, they could have gotten the 2 and lost that game. I believe there were still 30 seconds left and 2 timeouts for the Ravens, right? So there's a good – and Justin Tucker, who had already missed an extra point, is probably feeling like all I want is an opportunity to win this game now. And it could have been on his foot with a chance to hit. And at the logo, he can hit it and win it, as he did in Detroit. So we know that's not an issue. It could have – I'm fine with it.
Although it kind of is, because, again, I saw Justin Tucker and McAfee was talking about that this morning as well. I saw Tucker a couple of weeks ago. I love him. Greatest kicker of all time. First ballot Hall of Famer, the greatest player to ever play the game at his position. Think about that. 105 years of the NFL. Justin Tucker, in my opinion, is the greatest to ever play the game at his position. But he's hitting the ball fat. He's not the same. He missed an obvious one in Cleveland where we all looked at each other and went, I've never seen him hit a ball like that. He's still money on the table, as good as it gets. But there is no Justin Tucker automatic kick anymore. All right, let's move on to the rest, Sam. Let's do it, of Week 10. It's an okay week. Here are the 5 matchups that matter the most to us. These games we all like, right? We got the Bills, the Colts. McCaffrey's back. The Niners going to Tampa. We got the Broncos and the Chiefs in the AFC West. We got the Lions and the Texans, the great game on Sunday night where the Texans are going to be wearing all red. I don't like it. And the Commanders and the Steelers as well. For those of you who are going, wait a minute, what about the glamour division? What about the Cowboys and the Eagles? I would say, what about them? Because this is not a good game. It isn't. If Micah comes back, hey, good for you, Micah. That's awesome. CeeDee Lamb's a question mark. Tyler Guyton's a question mark. Cooper Rush is starting for Dak Prescott. And the Cowboys, all you need to know right now, Sam, all you need to know, if the Cowboys win out, and they're 3-5, so if they win out and go 12-5, mathematically there's a chance they don't make the playoffs. They are not guaranteed a playoff spot if they win out. They technically need some help. Now, that help might be 2 teams tying randomly Week 14, but that possibility mathematically exists. So if the Cowboys still need help to make the playoffs in Week 10, then respectfully, even though this may turn into a classic, I am going to keep the Cowboys off this list because they are one of 12 teams in the NFL, as we sit here today, that technically need help to make the playoffs if they are to win out.
It is. I just want to say that it is funny that a Week 10 Eagles-Cowboys game really is not in the conversation for game of the week. And I would agree with you. Look, my family's from Philly. I grew up an Eagles fan. I say don't judge any Eagles season or Cowboys season until they play each other, because I think that is such a litmus test for both of those teams. But this is so different now with Dak. I would say I would probably argue and die on the hill with you if Dak was playing the game, despite the Cowboys record. I would say it still matters so much because of what happens divisionally, especially in this division where no team seems to win it back-to-back seasons since 2004. But Cooper Rush versus Jalen Hurts, not to say it won't come down to it, and it very well could. And the Cowboys obviously want to save, quote unquote, their season. And Cooper Rush is 5-1 as a starter, but although that loss is the Eagles, this does not feel like the game that it was going to be 2 weeks ago, 3 weeks ago, a month ago. It's totally different. And it's a shame, by the way, when we don't get Dak versus Jalen. Dak Prescott, if you look at the numbers, is better consistently against this team, the Eagles, than any other team in the league. He is absolutely rookie season Dak Prescott when he plays the Eagles. He is spectacular against them, and we're not going to see it. So there you go. It's off the list, and see you later. Goodbye to the Cowboys and Eagles.
Yeah. And you had, an owner and a coach seemingly put their foot in their mouth on Friday as well, where Jerry Jones said, in essence, that they may run Trey Lance out there and have a package of plays for him. I'm sure Mike McCarthy's thrilled about that. And you had Nick Sirianni say that Jalen Hurts was held out of practice with an ankle injury. And then when the reporters say, wait a minute, an ankle? PR had to jump in and go, no, it was rest. It was rest. He goes, oh, yeah, it was rest. I'm sure they'll be getting a letter from the league on that one. Well done. All right, let's get to the games that do matter. And let's start there with the Buffalo Bills and the Indianapolis Colts on the top left corner. Buffalo is 7-2. Indianapolis is 4-5. Keon Coleman is out and Michael Pittman are out. So your two big-name wide receivers in this game, one of them a rookie, one of them not, are both out. Buffalo is the 2 seed in the AFC. They lead the AFC East. They will cruise to an AFC East title yet again. The Colts right now are the 8 seed. Bills have won 4 in a row, and they have a 4-game lead in the division. It is the biggest division lead right now of the 8 divisions. The Colts are coming back home. They've lost 2 in a row. Both of those have been on the road, and they are going with Joe Flacco. They are 1-2 with Joe Flacco. They're 3-3 with Anthony Richardson. Small sample size. They look better with Flacco, except this past Sunday night when they played the Vikings. The Bills don't turn the ball over. They're better top to bottom. The Colts have the second worst run defense in the NFL. This, to me, is a James Cook and Ray Davis kind of game. And I think this could be the last game that Flacco starts before they go back to Anthony Richardson. I'm a Flacco fan. You know that. And it could be totally wrong. Flacco could come out back at home, carve him up, okay? And this could be we just had a bad week last week, which is what Shane Steichen is trying to say. Hey, we're with Flacco. It just didn't happen last week. Maybe I'm wrong. I think the Bills get to 8-2, setting up next week's colossal showdown. And I think we see, Anthony Richardson coming back, not just because Kevin O'Connell hugged it out and had that great moment with him post-game last week after the Vikings beat them on Sunday night. NFL Films, a touching moment. That's why I love Kevin O'Connell. He connects with players as well as anybody in this league. But I just sense Anthony Richardson, Sam, is waiting behind door number 2 for his second shot.
It's really funny because of all the debate that went into that decision. And that week between Tuesday and Friday, things changed so dramatically. Steichen, at first, it seemed as if, all right, this is a breather for Anthony Richardson. We're not saying this is a permanent move. We're just saying that for right now, we would like him to not have the responsibility of being the starter, and we're going to let Flacco get in there. That was a fine thing to say, and it set up the Sunday night matchup that we were all looking for. But for that Sunday night game, it came out, you know what? This is sort of a permanent move. We'd like Anthony to not be the starter right now. And you and I said, either way, the outcome of that game is going to change so much. And it has, because the offense just absolutely sputtered. Jonathan Taylor looked good in that game, and it was great to have him back, but it was Not a great performance by Flacco in particular. And of course, the Vikings defense got back on track. They had not sacked Stafford in the game the week before on that Thursday nighter, and they were absolutely out for it against Flacco. And Flacco's obviously not necessarily Lamar Jackson out there. He's not running away from anybody. And it was ugly. It feels like this is an opportunity for Anthony Richardson to come back and lead a late game playoff push for the Colts. However, as we said, the outcome matters. If Flacco beats the Bills, it's all back to Flacco, right? I mean, it's all back on Flacco if they beat the Bills. It absolutely is. And if you look at the Colts schedule, there's a game against the Lions in there, but the rest of it is incredibly winnable.
They get the Jets next week.
You're talking Jets, Patriots, Broncos, Titans, Giants, Jaguars. I mean, I'm sorry, but that is anything but a gauntlet. The Colts have it ahead of them. The problem is, we know in the division, they're not going to have a tiebreaker, but within the conference, if they do, that could help from a wild card standpoint. Feels like they're still in this. They're very much still in it. And I'm probably holding on a little too tight to the idea that I thought the Colts were a playoff team, period. I thought the Colts with Richardson and Pittman and Taylor were a playoff team. And now we're beginning to lose a grip on that.
Yeah, look, if they win this, they are back in it because they'd be 5-5, and they're the 8th seed currently in the AFC. I mentioned they get the Jets next week. The Bills, I hope this is not a look-ahead game, and I doubt it will be. The Bills next week get Kansas City in Orchard Park, and that one likely also without Keon Coleman, as Sean McDermott intimated on Friday that this is not just a one-week injury for Coleman. It could be a multiple-week injury for the rookie wide receiver out of Florida State. So that is our number one game in no particular order that we think matter this week. Let's go around the circle here. We're going to go counterclockwise, and we're going to get also a 1:00 game, the Niners and the Buccaneers in Tampa. And this is finally in week 10 expected to be, according to Kyle Shanahan, the return and the season debut of one Christian McCaffrey, who is on my fantasy team and has not done a darn thing. And that's why my fantasy team has only one win and one tie. Not the only reason.
A tie?
And a tie. I'm not going to be the angry fantasy guy. Like, there are people out there that actually believe that the Niners owed, or Christian McCaffrey owed, some kind of transparency to fantasy owners before fantasy drafts.
What?
Yeah, I've actually heard that argument. That is bonkers. I know that, look, some people have money in their fantasy league. A lot of people do. But please, spare me. Anyway, the Niners right now, and here's what's surprising about this game. The Niners are the 10 seed. The Buccaneers are the 11 seed. And McCaffrey's not the only injury. We know that Ayuk is out for the year. Debo's got the ribs and the oblique. And Jennings has missed a couple of games. Jawan Jennings with a hip injury. Jordan Mason couldn't finish 2 weeks ago with that. I believe he had a shoulder injury. But the Niners are coming off a bye. And coming off a bye, not that this year has to be like last or the year before, coming off a bye the last 3 seasons, the Niners are 16-2. I don't just mean the week after the bye. I mean collectively. After the bye, the previous 2 years, the Niners are 16-2. That doesn't mean they win this week, although I think they do. They face a Buccaneers team that has lost 3 in a row, is going to be without Mike Evans again, clearly misses him, clearly misses Chris Godwin, and clearly cannot hold a lead. That's the Bucs' biggest issue. They cannot hold a lead, and they're giving up 27 points a game. Baker's doing a heck of a job of outscoring people, but without Evans and Godwin, you're just not going to outscore people every week. Now, there is a silver lining here for the Buccaneers if they win this game. They get to 5-5. They're not going to win the division. Matter of fact, I think Atlanta has won that division. They're going to beat the Saints this week. They're going to sweep the division, basically. They're going to be 5-0 once they, I'm digressing here, once the Falcons beat the Saints this week. And I do think they do beat the fighting Darren Rizzies. They go to 5-0, and all they have now left to sweep the division is beating the Panthers a little bit later, but I digress. 5 of the Bucs' final 8 games come against teams that right now, as we sit here, have only 2 wins. I told you before there are 9 teams with only 2 wins. The Bucs play 5 of them down the stretch. Think about that. They have, by far, the easiest remaining schedule in the NFL. if they could win this game, I think the Bucs have a good chance of making the postseason. I just don't think they're going to win this game. I also don't think, Sam, that Christian McCaffrey coming back is all of a sudden like this magic elixir because of the other injuries I listed. And I also don't think that him coming back means he's going to get 20 touches. He isn't. That would be disastrous, and that would be malpractice for Kyle Shanahan to bring him back and do something other than ease him in, right? Get ready for all the angry fantasy tweets on Sunday. Why'd I have him in my lineup? And I love fantasy football. He only got 8 touches. Guys, he's not getting 30 touches Sunday in Tampa. It just is not going to happen.
And you've made this point. Opening the practice window does not mean on the field. And
no, he's going to play.
I know that. No, I know that. But my point is, take it back. And it was also then followed by the McVay quote that you said,
yes,
which is right.
Return to play does not mean return to performance.
So who is he going to be? What version of him? What percentage of Christian McCaffrey do we have here? And obviously interesting in Cleveland, the practice window was opened on Chubb. Then there was a week that he did not play. Then he came back. He did get in the end zone, but it wasn't as if everything was handed to him. It was interesting because Ford was actually out of that game. So there were a lot of factors. But for this, the Niners offense looked pretty good from a running standpoint with Mason in there. And frankly, even was serviceable with Garendo as well. But what it does, Andrew, McCaffrey opens up opportunities for Debo that are different, right? There's less responsibility on Debo in the run game, and now those can be more gadget plays, and there's going to be more opportunity for Ayuk and Kittle, et cetera. Now, because of what you have in Mason, also nice to be able to have the 2 backs to go to there. I feel like obviously this is more, Garendo is probably, from a fantasy standpoint, that'll probably be the end of him, but McCaffrey coming back for Shanahan, especially with a bye week, to look at all of the options, to open up that portion. In other words, to have that chapter of Kyle Shanahan's brain back is scary for the league regardless. All of those plays, that becomes now something interesting to look at. And again, if they had a 2-point play that was going to decide the game, having McCaffrey versus not obviously makes a big difference there. One interesting note, you mentioned it, what the record is off the bye for the Niners. However, the Niners not won back-to-back games this season. It's been a bit of a sputtering team so far this season in regards to, and you've said it, they don't look the same. You love the Lions overall in the NFC for what they've given us through these 9 weeks and into week 10. But it feels like this is that moment. And if you look back at Shanahan and the Niners over the last 5 seasons, it's not been an incredible torch at the start. There's usually a turning point. Last year, I would say it could have been the loss. It was the 3 losses, right? They lost the Niners lost to the Browns. They had lost to the Vikings.
Yeah.
This is a team that comes on strong late. And despite what their record has been through 9 weeks, the last 5 seasons, they end up in the NFC Championship, don't they? They seem to just fall into the NFC Championship. And by the way, 3 straight, and I believe 4 of 5. I mean, this is really interesting the way that the Niners are in the NFC Championship again and again and again. This feels like that chance to do it. A healthy Bucs team here, I think, beats the Niners. I think with what Evans was giving this team, with Godwin having his best season, so different. I just don't necessarily see Otten being the guy that's going to beat the Niners here. I don't think Baker's gotten enough out of the players that have been the rookies that have had to step in for Evans and Godwin. It hasn't been there. It was an ugly loss. The Falcons game should have been closer. It was not. This feels like Niners. I think we're both saying that, but I just think overall rest of the season, this feels like the beginning of the Niners that we've known. And this is a statement coming out of the bye. That's simply it.
Yeah. There's a chance that if they win this game, the Niners, that they are even come Monday morning with the Falcons in the win column as the Rams play Monday night here in LA, also trying to get their 5th win. They face the Dolphins here at SoFi. Well, not here. I mean, like 10 minutes from here, at least 10 minutes at 3 a.m. with nobody on the road. All right.
Good luck.
Let's get to the Steelers and the Commanders, which in many people's eyes, you know what, me included, is probably the game of the week that isn't in Houston. The Steelers are 6-2. The Commanders are 7-2. Marshawn Lattimore is not going to play. Dan Quinn made that clear on Friday morning. He is not magically cured from his hamstring injury, as some players are magically cured from injuries when they get traded. Devontae Adams most notably. He is not, so he is not going to play. This is the 3 seed in the AFC, the 2 seed of the NFC. You have 2 first-place teams. One of them has won 7 of 8. The other has won 3 in a row. The other being the Steelers, who are coming off a bye. And I think that is key here. The Steelers have also yet to play a division game, which I don't get, nor do I think is right heading into Week 10, that the Steelers have yet to play a game in the AFC North, but that is neither here nor there. You have a great scoring offense in the Commanders. They're averaging 29 points a game. Only the Lions and Ravens score more than the Commanders. And then you have the Steelers with the number 2 scoring defense in the NFL. Only the Chargers have given up fewer points than the Steelers. Sam, I think if the Commanders don't turn the ball over, I think they win this game. I just think they do. I know there's that, I don't even know what the numbers are, nor do I care. Rookie quarterbacks against Mike Tomlin. Doesn't matter to me. This guy doesn't play like a rookie quarterback. He hasn't turned the ball over. The Commanders have, how many giveaways they have? 1, 2, 3 the entire season. No one has fewer. 3 giveaways the entire season. If they keep that up, and if their pass defense, which once they got out of September, even without Marshawn Lattimore now, as I said, has actually been pretty good. I mean, there's some less than great quarterbacks they've played in that stretch, put it that way. And so some of their pass numbers and sack numbers are inflated. But the Commanders are allowing less than 150 pass yards a game once we turn the page from September to October. I like the Commanders here. I think this magical run kind of continues. I don't think this is one of those days where on Sunday night we're debating whether or not Justin Fields should come back, but you never know. Russell could throw 5 balls into the ground and people go nuts watching this thing. But I am team Commander World Police here on this one.
I'm a little torn.
That's an old joke from a movie, by the way, nothing to do with politics. You get it. Anyway.
We do. Too much there in regards to the other. But Andrew, I'm a little torn on one part of it. Russell Wilson, is he the quarterback who can take advantage of the Commanders' secondary minus Lattimore being so far this season? And I understand since September, definitely been better. But Russell Wilson throwing the ball into the sky against the Jets and getting it right. I mean, there was a lot that went right.
That's what he does. That's what he's going to do.
So it feels like if those come down the way they did against the Jets, that's going to be a different story. If those are more 50-50 balls and the Commanders are only allowing a few of those, then this is going to be their game. I have a feeling, I guess I'm just going to side with Tomlin here. I'm going to say Tomlin proves, and to this point in this season, has proven me wrong too many times. I just feel like this is another one of those, wow, Tomlin got it right. Tomlin was right to go with Russell Wilson, and will expose what we haven't seen from the Commanders defense to this point. And then after this, the Commanders are going to go on a nice run with Lattimore, et cetera. As far as winning the NFC East, I still don't know for the Commanders, but this feels like one of those where we keep wanting to say the Steelers aren't who we thought they were. And I just think this is just going to go that way. I look back at that Bears game for the Commanders, and we all look, I can't stand when people take that play away. We're not taking away the second greatest play of the season, which was that Hail Mary, but it took that to win that game. And I understand it was a late surge by the Bears, but the Bears also did fumble at the goal line and still find a way to come back in that game. So that game just sticks in my head for many, many reasons. But that Bears Commanders game is just stuck in my head. And I feel like the Steelers and Tomlin can expose that. Maybe we see a few gadgets out of Justin Fields. Maybe we do. I actually think Jaden Daniels, I'll say it right now, I actually think Jaden Daniels is going to win MVP. How about that? I think he's going to have to do a lot more because of Lamar, but
they're going to give him Rookie of the Year.
Do you think there's something to that, by the way, that when a player's already getting an award, that sometimes in voters' minds, there's a little bit of, well, he's got something, it's not like we're not recognizing.
It's like you're not going to give a closer the Cy Young.
It's Eric Gagne. Right. It happens, but rarely, because there is an award.
Eric Gagne, Willie Hernandez, Mariano Rivera never got one.
Right. Right. But it happens. It does happen. And Jaden has done that much. And I think it'll simply come down. If the Commanders are the 1 seed, which it doesn't seem like they will be, but if somehow that were to happen, then yeah, I think there's going to have to be a conversation about Jaden
there's no way.
as that.
There's no way they're going to be the 1 seed. But I hear you. He's played that well. He truly has. On the thing about Russell, yeah, they made the right choice in Pittsburgh. So far, so good. But when I tell you that the Commanders' pass defense has really turned around since we got out of September. So the quarterbacks they faced in September, Baker Mayfield, Joe Burrow, Kyler Murray, among others, okay? Once you get to October, they faced Deshaun Watson, who certainly has not played well this year. And while he's had his moments, they were not in that Commanders game. Then they faced Lamar, lost the game. Since then, they have faced Bryce Young, no, or was it Andy Dalton? I can't remember in that game. I think it was Andy Dalton, but you get my point. They blew him out. Caleb and the Bears. Caleb had 2 potential game-winning drives in the fourth quarter, but they won that game. Then they faced Daniel Jones, and now they're going to face Russell Wilson. I think Russell kind of fits in that same category, honestly. I don't think Russell is so exceptionally better than any of those guys that I just listed. So I think the Commanders win this game at home. I really do. I really do. And I do think he's going to be the offensive rookie of the year. Matter of fact, you could just put his name on the plaque.
That's done. Yeah, that's a wrap.
That's absolutely done. All right, let's get to Denver and Kansas City here. Does anyone know? Raise your hand. Does anyone know the last time the Chiefs lost a game? Anyone can guess. Anyone?
I'm going to say is the number 14 games, by the way?
It's not
the number. Include the postseason,
but yeah. We're talking on the calendar.
Okay.
They haven't lost since Christmas. Okay. You are already, when you go to stores right now, obviously, we're well into November. All you see is Christmas stuff when you go, right? You're already getting your pre-Black Friday sales. Black Friday's not until the 29th, by the way, of November. We're 3 weeks off. They haven't lost since Christmas of last year.
Raiders. Yeah, Raiders.
They lost to the Raiders on Christmas Day last year. And yes, Sam, it is 14 consecutive games, including the playoffs, that they have won. I don't even know what they did in the preseason. Preseason does not matter. They haven't lost since Christmas. And Mahomes is 12-1 against the Broncos. They are not going to lose this, even though, as we focus on Mahomes, this is a defensive struggle. These are 2 of the top 3 defenses in the NFL, scoring defenses in the NFL. So this is a defensive struggle. Bo Nix didn't play well last week, turned the ball over. I think Vance Joseph's going to have something for Patrick Mahomes, but I will not and cannot vote against the Chiefs. In my eyes, the Lions are still the best team in football, but on a neutral field, I might have to lean towards the Chiefs only because they have Mahomes. I know the Lions beat them last year at Arrowhead. I get all that, right? Seems like 1,000 years ago. They're not playing right now, and if they do play, it's not going to be until we all get to New Orleans. But they're not losing to the Denver Broncos. I'm sorry. They're not. As we look ahead to next week and the trip to Buffalo, this right now is kind of a playoff game. It wouldn't be a wild card game because the Chiefs would get the bye, but this is the 1 seed against the 7 seed. And this 1 seed now is DeAndre Hopkins, who last week had half the number of catches, 8, than he had, actually more than half, the entire season with Tennessee, which was 15. I mean, think about that. They're a much different team. But this is a Kansas City win, and I'm sorry you're not going to convince me otherwise.
I don't even think I can try, and that's not. This is why point spreads exist, is to make this interesting from that standpoint.
What is the line on this from a recreational purpose only?
The line on this, I believe, is 6. No, I'm gonna pull it up because I believe that the fact that it's in KC, I believe it's 6 as we go through this. And I'll say this, Andrew, the Broncos, it was going to be a tough stretch when you look at the schedule. When the schedule came out, when the season started, it was obvious that the Broncos were going to have a struggle here with the Ravens and the Chiefs back to back. We know that. But this was such an interesting game last. Broncos-Ravens.
7.5.
You looked at, so it was more than 6, 7.5, right? Exactly. So that tells you what people think of the Broncos coming into this game, especially after what we saw in the Ravens game last week. But remember this, Andrew. That was a 7-point game going into halftime with the Ravens driving into field goal. They kept the cutaways were all to Justin Tucker. Justin Tucker, is he going to get a chance to kick a field goal here before we go to halftime? And instead, Zay Flowers rips off an unbelievable touchdown, breaking tackles on his way. And the game essentially was done at that point. The Broncos never made it interesting in the second half in any way, but were very much with the Ravens in that first half up until the last 30 seconds. Now, obviously, 4 quarters is what decides these games, but I thought we did see something. The early interception. I mean, first play of the game basically for the Broncos is an interception, and yet they still managed to stay in that game. Yes, it did take a Philly special to Bo Nix to get them back in that game, but it did happen. The Broncos showed something, but not enough. I don't even want to waste too much time on this. They showed something. They showed why they could be a playoff team, but not enough. Ravens Chiefs back-to-back is just going to be 2 losses for this team. That's period. I think we've seen a ton out of Bo Nix. And of course, in a season without Jaden Daniels, maybe there's conversation about offensive rookie of the year, but none of us thought the Broncos were going to be special enough to beat any of the top teams in the AFC. And I still don't think it's going to happen. It's obviously not going to happen right here.
I don't think it does. If it does, however, then it gives a little more juice to the Monday after Thanksgiving, keeping the Broncos in primetime, because they do have a Monday night primetime game coming up against the Browns. I obviously know this from a Browns perspective here. That game should stay, my personal opinion, of Monday night. Broncos, though, I don't think are going to win this game. But it does mean something for us because it means something in the AFC. These are 2 teams that are right now in the postseason, and the Broncos are one of 6 teams, as I said at the start of the show, that if the playoffs were to end today, would be in, that were not in a year ago. And if that happens, by the way, the number is 4 new teams every year for 34 consecutive years. Right now, we're looking at 6. And so it would be 35 straight years, at least 4 get in that didn't make it the year before. All right. And finally, now the game of the week, the game of the year of the week, the Detroit Lions against the red head to toe, the battle red, they call it, wearing Houston Texans. Now, there is a little bit of gamesmanship going on here. As we tape on Friday afternoon, East Coast time, Nico Collins, I don't think is going to play. Like, I'd be stunned if he plays. The Texans opened up the 21-day window for Nico Collins to return to the practice field today. You never see that on a Friday. He didn't practice Wednesday, Thursday. All of a sudden, you open it up on Friday and tell me the guy's going to come back from a month away with a hammy and play. Friday's practice isn't, for most teams, even that strenuous a practice. It's a good practice, right? But for a lot of teams, Thursday's their most strenuous practice. I just can't see Nico Collins playing in this game. I think it's all gamesmanship. On the flip side of that, the Lions, who traded for Zadarius Smith from the Browns, they say they don't know if he's going to play in this game either. And if I'm Zadarius, I'm saying, as much as I want to make good friends with my new team, I don't want to play because, Sam, this is the Browns' bye week. The Lions have already had their bye week. If Zadarius Smith plays this week, that's going to be 18 regular season games, plus inevitably a postseason run. If I'm the Lions, I hold him back. I give him the week off. The Texans are ready without Kenyon Green, guard, out for the year. I'm going to guess without Will Anderson as well, without Nico Collins, I'm assuming, and without Tank Dell. All of that aside, as I said before, I think the Lions are the best team in football. I would be stunned if the Lions don't make the Super Bowl. Stunned. I think they're going to win this game. This is the 1 seed in the NFC, the 4 seed in the AFC. The Lions are trying to do a couple of things that haven't happened in years and years and years. They're trying to win 7 consecutive games for the first time in nearly 30 years. It's 29 straight years, or 29 years since they last did it. And they have never won 5 straight road games in the same season, ever. They've been around 100 years. They've never won 5 straight road games in the same season. They're scoring 32 points a game, and they are decidedly here the better, and even without Aiden Hutchinson, the healthier team.
I go back to the Lions game against the Ravens last season in Baltimore. ugly game, but again, an AFC opponent, and we know Lamar Jackson has destroyed, I believe it's 23-1 against the NFC. It might be 22-1, but I think it's 23-1. And what the Ravens did that day to the Lions essentially said, oh, wow, the Lions are not, in some people's minds, it was okay. The Lions are not a Super Bowl team. They're almost here, but they're not quite there. That was one of those games that just, they did not live up to it. The Texans are not the Ravens, but this looks to me like that type of game it could very well be. Not to mention, Houston is, again, whether you say embarrassed or motivated or any of that, Houston's got the rest from Thursday night. Of course, that's fine. It was a Thursday nighter against the Jets, Halloween night. That was an ugly, really inexplicable loss in many ways. And of course, you mentioned it, not having Nico. This offense is a little less. CJ Stroud is a little less without Nico, but he's been able to do so much with Tank Dell. He's been able to do and find so much in this offense regardless. That is CJ Stroud. This is a game the Texans find a way to win. This is one of those battle behemoth games that the Texans find a way to win against the Lions. And I don't think it necessarily comes down to, I really think this could be a mix. I could see Mixon being the difference here. That's been a special part of the Texans. We take the Texans off the pedestal because, losing to the Vikings the way that they did, the loss of the Jets just feels like, wow, does that take them out of the conversation as being the best team in the AFC?
Can I jump in real quick?
Yeah.
I haven't taken them off a pedestal. They're one of the top teams in football. I just don't think they're as good as the Lions.
The Lions have shown
that's
more.
my point.
The Lions
are the best team in football. Full stop.
The Lions have shown more to this point. I would say if you're just looking at what we've had in totality this season, the Lions have given us more reasons to say they are the just better team on paper. They're favored by 4 here. It makes perfect sense. But, and again, on the road, even being favored, I mean, this is a pretty big deal. I see Mixon being key here. And I'm seeing the Texans. That to me, that Jets game was so ugly and just there was something off there, something that DeMeco Ryans will eventually tell us what happened, but something happened in that game. And I know the Jets were obviously, quote, saving their season, and it was a game where Devontae Adams finally came out, but this one feels there's something here for Houston. There's something just as surprising. I mean, you remember it obviously last season, Andrew, how that Texans-Browns playoff game. It was a surprise that the game ended the way that it did. There was something, the Texans had a gear there in that game that we didn't quite see, and I expected to show up on Sunday night. No, not at all. But I expect that gear to show up on Sunday night.
Okay. We disagree on that one. Those are the 5 games, ladies and gentlemen, that mean something to us. I know it doesn't look like a great week. It's actually a better week than I think looks on paper. There are certainly games to get excited about. And we haven't even touched on the Monday night primetime game, which I will be at least I think I will right now, which is the Rams and the Dolphins. The Rams have something going. Last year, they were 3-6. They made the playoffs. This year, they were 1-4. They've pulled even now. They've won 3 in a row, and it is set up well for them down the stretch. The offensive line is kind of sort of getting healthy again. Rob Havenstein is out this week. That's a concern, but you see something building there for them. We could focus on that a little bit next week. For now, that is going to do it. I'm going to enjoy my Browns bye week on the couch with coffee in the morning and alcohol in the afternoon. Please enjoy responsibly. Please, 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 please. And enjoy this pod responsibly as well. And subscribe, tell your friends and neighbors about it. For Sam Batesh, my name is Andrew Siciliano. Enjoy week 10, everybody. Thinking out loud. So long.